Can virtue be taught in the Meno? Imagine you're having a conversation with a friend about what makes a person virtuous. You might ask, can virtue be taught, or is it something you're born with? This is exactly the question that Socrates and Meno discuss in Plato's dialogue, the Meno. Let's start with Meno's initial question to Socrates. Can you tell me, Socrates, whether virtue can be taught, or if it can't be taught, but can be acquired through practice, or if it arises in people by nature or in some other way? This sets the stage for a deep exploration of what virtue is and how it might be obtained. Socrates responds by saying he doesn't know what virtue is, which might seem surprising, but it's a clever way to get Meno to think critically. Meno then tries to define virtue by listing different types of virtues for different people, like men, women, and children. However, Socrates points out that these definitions are too specific and don't capture the essence of what virtue really is. Socrates asks Meno to define virtue in a way that applies to everyone, regardless of their role or status. Meno struggles with this, eventually suggesting that virtue is the ability to acquire good things like wealth and power. But Socrates challenges this by asking if acquiring these things justly and piously is necessary for it to be considered virtue. Meno agrees that justice and other virtues are essential, but he can't seem to grasp the unified concept of virtue that Socrates is seeking. One of the most famous parts of the dialogue involves Socrates teaching a slave boy about geometry. This is meant to illustrate that knowledge and perhaps virtue can be discovered through questioning and reasoning rather than being taught directly. Socrates suggests that learning is a form of recollection, implying that the knowledge is already within us and just needs to be brought out. Despite this, Socrates remains skeptical about whether virtue can be taught. He argues that if virtue were teachable, there would be teachers of virtue, but he claims he has never found any. This leads to the conclusion that virtue might not be something that can be taught in the conventional sense. In the end, Socrates and Meno agree that virtue is something beneficial in the soul, but don't resolve whether it can be taught. Socrates suggests that virtue might come from the gods, but this is more of a philosophical musing than a definitive answer. So, can virtue be taught according to the Meno? The dialogue doesn't give a clear yes or no. Instead, it shows that the question is complex, and that virtue might be something that we discover within ourselves through reasoning and reflection, rather than something that can be taught by others.